The Joe Rogan Experience.
So, I guess we just get right into it. The last case that we talked about, we had a very unfortunate incident happen after the podcast, about a month later.
Yeah.
The gentleman beheaded somebody.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of allegedlys, but
Yeah.
there was so many crazy things to that case. The craziest thing was him trying to fool the security cameras with a wig. Like, I guess he didn't know how high-resolution cameras had gotten over the 25 years that he was in jail.
I mean, apparently there's a lot he didn't know.
Yeah.
The only reason I say allegedly is because I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I started calling him guilty
Yes.
before he has a trial. But
Of course.
based on the surveillance,
It doesn't look good.
what do they say in Texas? It ain't too shiny.
It's so crazy because, we went out with him that evening. We brought him to the comedy club. He was hanging out with us in the green room. And then the news broke. And then the comics were all like, hey, man, what the fuck? What the fuck you doing bringing that guy around? I'm like, well, we didn't know.
I mean...
Who could have known he was going to do that other than him?
I'm as shocked over it now as I was in the moment. I mean, yeah, I don't, there are no words. I went through, it's really not funny. I mean, I'm only laughing out of sort of nervousness, I guess.
Of course.
And I mean, yeah, I was in St. Louis of all places, which is only memorable because that's where I was when someone called me and said, have you looked at the news? And I said, I was in court and I was on a break. And, I called them a miracle on this show. And,
Yeah.
and the media shoved that straight up my ass. I mean,
Of course. But that's what they're going to do. Well, he was the only guy that you had ever brought in that was actually guilty, that you felt was in jail for too long. He got a 50-year sentence, correct?
70.
70. And it was reduced to 25?
It was just
20
basically time
time
served. He
served.
did about 30 years, and they resentenced him. Look, I would be I've had a lot of time to think about this, and I know you and I have discussed it privately, and I kind of went into a hole after this. This didn't happen to me. A lot of people say, I'm so sorry, but some people have said other things that weren't very nice.
Yeah.
But the people that I, regard their opinion were sorry that it didn't happen to me. My first thought was, I had two thoughts, was that poor guy that got killed. And it was a gruesome murder. It wasn't just beheaded. I think he was dismembered completely.
Well, he was trying to get rid of the body, right?
Right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. And my first thought was for him and his family. And then I think my second and third thought, maybe in tandem, was this tore down 50 years of work that a lot of people have fought really hard for and really need. And I felt like I let you down. You've given us an amazing platform to get stories out for people that really need help. I think we've made a ton of progress. We've got some exonerations as a direct result of this.
Yeah,
show.
you didn't let me down at all.
No, I
didn't. I appreciate that you felt like that. It didn't feel like that to me at all. It was just, listen, there's a reality of prison life. There's a reality of being incarcerated. There's a reality of taking a person who's convicted of a violent crime and putting them in jail with violent people for 30 years. There's just a reality. And, I don't know what history he had with this man that he allegedly killed, but, it's just like you can only take so much.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know. My first emotion, this is from me and my therapist, my first emotion is usually like guilt. So once I took a little bit of time and thought it through, I mean, of course, I come on your show and then you're, splattered all over the news for something not positive.
Good news is I don't watch the news, and I don't pay attention, and I don't listen to anything anybody writes about me, so it didn't bother me at all.
You're rare. So look, for me, I have to take a hard look at what I'm doing and take the mirror out and look straight in it and say, like, what did I do wrong?
You did nothing wrong.
Well,
I don't think you did anything wrong. You just listen. The man had great qualities. He like when you talk to him, he's very intelligent, very nice guy. He just thought he could get away with getting payback on somebody.
Yeah, look, that's super gracious of you. I'm not whether I did something wrong or not. I typically go to blame. And that's something that that's a kink I have to work out in my personality. But let me just articulate it because I think the platform is so important to me, and getting these stories out is so important to me. And I think that where I've landed is that he didn't let me down. Look, I was the public face of his resentencing. There was a lot of great people involved. And it wasn't just from the defense side. The Center for Appellate Litigation had some amazing people working on his case. The District Attorney of Manhattan agreed to this. So on paper, even in their personal interactions with him, there was nothing that raised a red flag for anyone. He didn't let anyone down if he did this, people will draw their own conclusion. He'll have a trial. He didn't let anyone down if he did this but himself and the people that still need help. And I have to swallow the jagged pill that this work comes with some letdowns. The recidivism rate for people that have served long sentences like that is less than 1%. It just happened to happen on a case where I was involved. I have no...
Is it really that low?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at exonerations, resentencings of people that have been incarcerated for more than 20 years, it's that low. And you know, the harsh reality is that if you put someone on a public platform and they then do what he supposedly did, it's going to make headlines. I realized something, though, that, look, no one could have imagined what's in the dark recesses of that man's soul, whether it's, you know, his group home upbringing and abuse, the prison experience. It's not to make an excuse. He did it if he did it. If he's convicted and he did it, that's on him. What I'm guilty of is giving a guy a second chance. And I'm why am I reluctant to say this? I can't apologize for giving someone a second chance and then, you know, they squander it. All I can do is say, well, what could I have done better? I mean, I have a deep understanding, I think, of what incarceration means. I mean, I read this book. I always get his name confused. Is it Henry Jack Abbott or Jack Henry Abbott? It's called In the Belly of the Beast when I was in college. And it's a series of letters that this inmate wrote to Norman Mailer. It's a fascinating book. And about what incarceration does to somebody from the standpoint of the practical day-to-day, from the deep psychosis inducing confinement and everything else. And 2 days before the book was released and it was reviewed by the New York Times, the guy snapped and killed someone in the East Village. And no one will know what it is like to be in there. And again, I don't want to offer this as an excuse, but what it has caused me to do is reevaluate and say, look, maybe I need to take a much closer look at what sort of mental health counseling these folks are getting. Like Sheldon, I arranged for him to be speaking to a trauma therapist. Should I have been on him more to be going to those appointments? Maybe.
What was the circumstances with the guy that he allegedly killed?
I don't know if I'm doing it just because I'm distancing myself from it subconsciously, but I don't know all the circumstances. But apparently this was someone he knew from childhood and from in prison. I've heard rumors and, you know, stories about the guy threatened his son, to he slashed Sheldon when they were in prison. I don't know if you remember, Sheldon had this big gash across his face. But I don't know. And I frankly don't want to know at this point, because someone lost their life. And that, I think unfortunately for my mental health, I just wear that stuff. If I felt even remotely responsible for that, which I do, and I can be at peace with it, but I didn't cause that death. And I don't, I can take some responsibility for it in the sense that what could I do going forward, whether it's people that are being exonerated for crimes they didn't commit, or if it's people that are getting resentenced. You cannot undo decades of confinement. You just can't. And they all need mental health counseling, all of them. And I have to put that on my shoulders. I just do, because, they all have issues. And they come out and need mental health counseling. And there's a stigma attached to it, especially in the African-American community. And there shouldn't be. It's no different than if you have a problem with your liver, and you have to take medication. I mean, I've always been upfront about the fact that I'm on medication. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's especially warranted when you're in those circumstances. Again, none of this is to make an excuse, but I just think that there's a lot more emphasis that I can focus on assimilation more. And I think that making sure that they have job training and that they feel safe when they get out. I mean, there hasn't been one person who I've been involved in their case where even when they're innocent, they get out and it's a fucking shock. And I need to be a lot more sensitive to that, I think, and pay a lot more attention to what they're doing, how they're doing. Again, I had the foresight to put Sheldon in touch with and ensure that we were getting him mental health counseling with a trauma therapist, but I didn't want to meddle too much in that because it's on him to go. So, I mean, that's where I land, for better or for worse.
Well, if the guy really did slash his face, if you've been in literal mortal combat with a person and this person is allegedly threatening your son or whatever, there's only so much you can do to stop a person from seeking revenge.
I guess.
Especially if they don't have any hope outside of the system and they've been completely institutionalized, which, given the length of his sentence, is reasonable to assume.
Yeah, you're a lot more forgiving and understanding than a lot of people were and have been about this. There's been two schools of thought in the reaction. I mean, I got pretty nasty hate mail, and I got a lot of words of encouragement. I think the hate mail outweighed the words of encouragement.
Always.
But
psychologically, always.
I mean, by in substance, number, and probably psychologically.
Yeah.
But that shit just gives me fuel. If you're sending me, fuck you, you race baiter, you this, you that.
Race baiter?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of that.
How are you a race baiter?
By telling the truth about the state of race and the criminal justice system in this country. You see, the thing is, the one force field I have around myself is when that's incoming, I'm able to say, okay, thanks for the fuel. I'll never respond to it. Unless you're doing mental health counseling in a prison, unless you're a corrections officer or a police officer, know what it's like to be incarcerated, you have no fucking business giving me your shitty opinion about what you think I am or others that do this work. Get in the fucking arena and do it yourself. And I take that with a big grain of salt. I have enough common sense and practical sense to sort of to disregard that. But I have to be a big enough person to look at myself and say, well, what can I learn from this and what could I do better?